What is the most paranormal or unexplainable events you have witnessed? One day I was with my friends and suddenly my head started getting heavy and my vision began to white out at the point where I couldn't see anything at all. I immediately thought that someone cold drugged me and asked my friends to help me walk to a place where I could get some air and sit down. My sight was coming back, but I couldn't speak or express anything, couldn't respond or answer what my friends were asking. Somehow I got into a trance, and it felt like I was seeing my surroundings from an above me perspective. My friend called my mom and she picked me up. I still couldn't respond until I got home and went to the bathroom. 3 days later my mom received a call from my grandpa and I immediately knew what was going on. He told her that my dad had passed away and was found dead in his bathroom. I live with my mom and my dad used to live in other state. The forensic report showed that he died in that exact date and probably around the moment I've had that episode. On the day my father died I was alone in the apartment we lived in. While everyone was out mourning at my uncle's, I stayed home because I didn't want people to stare at me sobbing. Anyways, I'm in the living room and I hear footsteps in my mother's room that has a balcony. I straight up hear the balcony door open, so now I'm like sobbing and shouting asking who's there. I go check it out and there's no one there except a strong smell of tobacco in the room. My father used to smoke on the balcony. Never told anyone about it and just kept it for myself. Later learned my mother got blamed for my dad's death, even though they loved each other since they were teens, and my dad was simply a victim of cancer and a massive brawl broke out. So I just thought of it as my dad coming home because he couldn't be bothered to hear people arguing. I was a kid, maybe 10 years old. I came inside in the evening after playing outside in the backyard. I stopped by the exterior door to take my shoes off and just happened to notice that the basement door across the room was closed and dead bolted. It was an old door that didn't stay totally closed unless dead bolted. I look down to untie one of my shoes and I hear a loud bang and look up to see the basement door wide open. I noped the fuck out of there with my shoes still on. My parents were in the other room and didn't hear a thing. I went back later and the door/lock were totally undamaged. I have absolutely no idea what caused it and can't really come up with any rational explanation. I was pretty afraid of going in the basement for a while. My stepdad found our puppy Eddie on the side of the road. Someone had thrown him out of a moving car and he had broken legs, broken teeth, a swollen and closed eye, and was severely dehydrated. My stepdad took him to the vet and paid quite a bit of money for surgeries to get Eddie fixed up. He got attached to the doggo, so we ended up adopting him. After that, even though he was the family dog, he was best buds with my stepdad. Anywhere my stepdad was around the house, you could find Ed tagging along. Eddie and I grew up together. He died while I was in college, and my parents buried him in a pet cemetery. Since it was sort of sudden, and I was far away, I didn't get to say goodbye. A few months after that, I had a dream where Eddie comes and finds me. His hair is matted and dirty, and his flesh looks kind of rotted, but he's wagging his tail and seems really happy to see me again. Eddie starts leading me down a hazy path, and the farther we go, the faster his tail wags. Finally, we get to this giant wall of mist that extends across the entire horizon and rises higher than I can see. Eddie gets real close to it before trotting back to me. He licks my hand, gives me a couple of nose boops and whines a little. Then he turns around again and starts to do that happy dog prance toward the wall until he finally passes through it. I can sort of see his outline jumping up and down excitedly next to a human-shaped figure. I jog after Eddie and reach my hand out to touch the wall, hoping I'll be able to pass through it too. That's when my cell phone rings in real life, waking me up. When I answer it, my mom is on the other end crying. My stepdad had just died of a heart attack. About 5 years ago my husband and I went to visit his grandma. Big, beautiful 2-story house. I was going to head upstairs to put some pajamas on and saw a woman walk across the top of the stairs. It was only my husband, young daughter and his grandma in the house, and whoever I saw wasn't Granny. I went in the living room and told them what I saw, and his grandma goes, "Yeah, that's Lori. She visits a lot." Lori was my husband's mom who had died when he was 11. I was so fucking Spooked after that. I barely slept the rest of the time we were there. I have one. It must have been some kind of hallucination, but it really scared me. I was sitting in my bed watching YouTube for a couple hours. I got up and reached forward to set something on my nightstand or whatever. I had this strange undescribable feeling that I hadn't actually moved from where I was sitting at all. I quickly turned around and looked at where I was sitting seconds before, and there I was, still sitting there. I was outside my body. I could see the shocked, horrified expression come to my face at such a strange sight. I quickly sat back down right in the same spot and nothing strange happened again. When I was in high school, my younger brother and I shared a bedroom. His bed was on one side of the room and mine was on the other. My brother was an avid sleepwalker and would also talk in his sleep all of the time. Sharing a bedroom with him, it was unsettling at first, but I eventually got used to it. One night, it's about 3 AM and I suddenly wake up from a deep sleep, instantly alert. I had this urge to look towards my brother's bed. I felt a presence in the room. When I turned my head, I saw a tall, skinny shadow/human-like figure, and it was reaching its hand down towards my sleeping brother's face. Its hand got maybe an inch away before its head jerked to the side and looked at me, staring at it, frozen. The shadow then faded and moved up into the air, vanishing through the ceiling. Immediately, my brother shot up out of his bed, stood, and walked to the light switch. He turned it on and looked at me. In a very calm and solemn voice, he says, "Did you feel it? Did you feel the hand?" He then turned off the light and went back to his bed. I hid under my covers the rest of the night. My brother doesn't remember any of it. Mine's not crazy scary, but it is true. I was in the living room with my grandma. We were the only ones home. She was working on a crossword puzzle, and I was messing around on my iPad. TV was off, windows were closed. All of a sudden, clear as day, I hear my name being whispered, but since it was so quiet it sounded loud. I looked up to my grandma, thinking it was her, asking her if she said something. She said no, but I heard your name. I have a couple. The first one was when my ex died. I had a 4-month-old daughter with him at the time, but we didn't live together. The night he died, I heard someone walking into the bedroom where my daughter was, and very clearly heard his voice talking to her. I called out, thinking he may have came in through the back, but no one answered. I found out the next day he died sometime during the night, probably around the time I heard the voice. The second one happened at the last place I lived. It's nothing terribly spooky, but I rented a townhouse and figured out that in my daughter's room there was attic access. I was stoked because that meant I could probably store my Christmas decorations up there. I get a kitchen chair to open it up and I couldn't. Not physically. Physically it was easy to open. Something mental stopped me from doing it. I had a huge fear, so I left it alone. Sometimes I'd get really eerie feelings, but I chalked it up to it being the first place I've lived in alone in a while. 2 years at that point, but I don't get those feelings in my new apartment at all. I found out from my neighbor not too long after the attic incident that the guy who lived there before me was a raging alcoholic and hung himself in the house. In my daughter's room. The one with the attic access. I'll bring out this story again. It happened to me 7 years ago and I can't figure it out, but I lost an hour of time in what felt to me like minutes. At the time I was working from home after a serious illness diagnosis. I had settled into a routine. Up at 7 AM and do house stuff and shower, then at 8 AM start prepping my work and laying out my day. Phone calls and emails from 8 to 9. This is all I remember. It was 7:55 and I brewed a cup of Keurig coffee on my kitchen located on the main floor of my house. I went upstairs to my office and turned on my computer to settle in and realized I forgot the coffee in the kitchen. I went back downstairs and got the coffee. As soon as I realized I forgot it, couldn't have been more than the time it took Windows to boot up, but I took a sip and the coffee was cold. Not warm, but actually cold. I thought my Keurig was broke, but I looked at the clock and it said 9:14. So whereas I expected it to be 8:05 maximum, somehow an hour and 10 minutes passed without explanation. It was very bothersome. I have no idea where that hour went. I have never had any blackout before or since. No seizures, and the meds I was on shouldn't have caused a lapse like that. I don't think I fell asleep because I distinctly remember typing my password and saying out loud shit I forgot the coffee. It kinda left me uneasy a bit. Nothing like had ever happened to me before or since. Thanks for watching. Check the link in the description to support the channel through affiliate links. Have a good one, lad.